ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to, this is the Merrimack Zoning Board of Adjustment, the agenda for Wednesday, August 27th, 2014. And we have a full board here, so Lenny, sit back and relax tonight. Sit back and relax. All right, and Phil, would you lead the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there anyone who plans to testify tonight? Would you stand, please? Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Is anyone over here going to testify? Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. All right, everyone, please shut off or mute their cell phones and pagers, please. The next ZBA meeting is scheduled for September 17th, 2014. And Rich, would you read the preamble, please?
Absolutely. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For the benefit of those who have not attended these hearings, the procedure is as follows. The petitions will be heard in the order that they were posted in a legal notice. However, the chairman may change the order with consent of the board to expedite the public hearing as appropriate. The board will treat all petitioners, their representatives, abutters, and other interested parties fairly and with respect. We allow each petitioner to state why his or her petition should be granted. Following the petitioner's statement, any abutter or interested party is allowed to speak for or against the petition. In the interest of getting all the facts, we will go around a second time. The board may elicit testimony at any point, but we cannot allow any cross-discussion. All questions must be directed to the board. Also, we ask that you do not repeat yourself or your neighbor's testimony. If you wish to indicate concurrence, please do so. After hearing all the facts regarding a petition, the chairman will close the public hearing, and the board will deliberate and vote on the petition before moving on to the next petition. You can expect fairness and impartiality by this board. The zoning board is empowered to legalize the breaking of the town's zoning ordinance, and this is not done lightly. State law and local ordinances set out the criteria that must be met in order for this board to grant your petition. I remind you that it is your responsibility to prove your case so this board has justification for granting the petition. The minimum requirements are listed in the form you received from the Community Development Office, and it would be helpful if you would proceed on that basis.
All right, the first petitioner is Convenient MD Urgent Care in KJB Ventures LLC, the owner, seeking a variance under section 17.10.4A of the zoning ordinance to allow a 172.7 square foot wall sign, whereas a 134.50 square foot is permitted. The parcel is located at 4 Dobson Way in the C2 General Commercial and Aquifer Conservation Districts, tax map 3D, lot 003-03, in case number 2014-32. And tonight, we'd like you to go right into the points of law that you filled in and stop after everyone. If the committee, any members of the committee have a question, we'll stop and ask you questions at that point.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record.
And please sign in on the sheet.
Yes. For the record, my name is Tim Sullivan. I'm an employee of Barlow Signs out of Hudson, New Hampshire. And with me this evening is
Max Pianic from Convenient MD. I'm the CEO of Convenient MD Urgent Care. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may approach the board before I begin, I've created a layout sort of the property with the building, outlining some distances and other things that were.
It's not something
We don't accept last minute handouts unless it was something that was set up with community development beforehand.
Okay, understood. With regards to our proposal, addressing the 5 points of law, we feel that the proposal will not diminish the surrounding property values. Our proposal is for a clean, clear identification of a business in a highly commercial area. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. Granting the variant, oh, I'm sorry,
No,
should I
sorry,
pause
yeah.
after each one? I'm sorry.
Yeah, please. Are there any questions? No, go ahead.
Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. We feel granting the variance would help the wayfinding public find our destination easily. It's a fairly congested area of town, and we're seeking a,
No, it's right there at exit 11.
right.
Tony?
Where you're located, I know where it is. You said the sign, this is a big sign.
Well, yeah, we're located on the corner of,
I'm sorry. it's
oh, was
my-
that me or you?
No, that's me, I didn't do
Okay.
it.
Okay. We're located on the corner of Camp Sargent Drive and Dobson Way, which is a private road going into the plaza. But our ultimate area of interest is the Continental Boulevard intersection with Camp Sargent Drive, because that's where the majority of our traffic will be coming from. So that's our goal, is to properly identify from that corner.
I just want to make it clear for the viewing public, since they can't see what we're seeing here. This is a sign on the building itself. It's not outside, it's not going to detract from line of sight or anything like that. It's on the building itself.
Correct. It's a wall sign, yes.
Tony, are you all set?
The front of the building, is it facing Continental Boulevard? Or is
Well-
it facing Camp Sargent and Dobson Road?
It's kind of facing into the corner. It faces into the corner of Dobson and Camp Sargent. But basically, you can go right through that intersection, right straight through to the Continental Boulevard intersection.
Okay.
I know you're quite a ways away, but this is the building here, correct?
Correct,
And you're going to be facing almost into the corner this way.
correct.
You see it, Tony?
Yeah, I see it. Okay.
My understanding was the sign was facing the parking lot. That's incorrect.
It's facing the parking lot of the property, yes.
The parking lot of the Safeway. Is that incorrect?
Yes, that's incorrect. It's
It's the other, or in the other direction, okay?
Any other questions? All right, go ahead.
Denial of the variance will result in an unnecessary hardship. Setback of Convenient MD's main fascia from Dobson Way, we're about 125 feet from that corner. But more importantly, the Continental Boulevard setback will make it difficult for motorists to easily locate this urgent care facility. We've tried there's been some other concerns about repositioning the building, if we could do another way to avoid this variance. And even by moving the building closer to the property line, we're still far from the Continental Boulevard intersection. So after discussions with the planning board and the location of our building and the parking areas and stuff, we felt that that was the best place to put the building. So that's why we determined the proper sight lines that were required.
Go ahead.
The use is not, granting the variance would do substantial justice. Again, it will allow Convenient MD to properly identify their new Merrimack location, while also providing signage which will aid the wayfinding public to an urgent care facility.
All right.
The use is not contrary to the spirit of the ordinance. Our proposed sign will encourage effective use of signage to direct, advertise, and inform the public. plus it will in no way negatively impact the adjacent properties.
All right, any questions, comments?
Yeah, I'm still a little confused. I was under the understanding that the sign would be facing towards Continental. Now
Yes, it is.
you just got through saying Camp Sargent.
If this is a property, here's Continental, this is our building. The
Yeah.
sign we're proposing is on this end of the building, which would be facing in this direction.
Okay, yep. Very good.
Now, is that,
Can't tell by the plans.
if you hold that up for just 1 second
Sure.
there, that line of sight seems to be cutting right through the corner of a building. Are you sure that's going to be able to be seen the way you want it to be seen?
Yeah, because the front of the building is actually a little taller, so we will have a sight line. This is actually a canopy for the gas station. So where our sign is going to be located, it will be up enough to
Right,
be
that's the
visible.
Gulf Station right there.
Correct.
Okay, because I was just wondering, because you say it's a one-story building, and I'm looking at that, and I'm wondering if it's not going to interfere with the Gulf Station.
Well, if you look at our prints, there's a facade above that first story, which is where the sign will be located.
Okay, thank you. Anything further from any of the committee members? Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to testify for the sign? Anyone who'd like to testify against the sign?
Could I make some other points at this stage, or no? Or?
Are they quick?
Yeah, they're very quick.
Okay.
Basically, with respect to the site in general and all the signage on the site, by rights, we're allowed 200 square feet on the two side elevations, meaning here and here, and 134 here and 134 on the rear elevation. I know there was a concern about the size of this sign. What we are proposing to do is there would be two 89 square foot signs on the two side elevations where 200 is allowed, and we will not be putting a sign on the rear elevation. So basically, as a total nutshell of the entire property, by code, we're allowed 668 square feet of signage on that building, and our proposal is only for 350.7 square feet. So we're basically using half of what we are allowed on the property. So I just kind of wanted to make that point with regards to seeking the larger sign on this small, unfortunately, the small end of the building is the most important end of the building, which is why we're seeking that additional square feet there.
And I have a question. It's just out of curiosity.
Sure.
Are you affiliated with any hospital, or are you a standalone?
That's a very good question. And actually, if you wouldn't mind, if I could give you a quick background on exactly what we're going to be doing in this facility.
Is your mic on?
Absolutely.
There you go.
Thank you. Now it is on. I'd like to give you just 2-minute background on what it is we're doing in that facility.
All right, if you could, because I'm just curious about it,
Sure.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I
So
know.
we are a non-hospital affiliated urgent care center. We're staffed. We currently have our first facility we opened in Windham, New Hampshire, in 2012, and our second facility we opened in Concord, New Hampshire, in October of last year. We're led by Dr. Jeff Collins, who was previously the medical director for Mass General's Urgent Care Center, and is a nationally known physician in this industry. Our physicians typically are emergency room physicians, nurses, rad techs, who spent 10 or 20 years in emergency rooms and are looking for a little bit of a lower intensity environment. And so we provide a very broad scope of care. It's that same team you'd find in an emergency room, but we are not an emergency room. We're there to treat non-life-threatening events. Typically, almost 85% of patients that go into an emergency room are there for neither an emergent event. Most of those patients we can treat in our facility. We focus a lot on making sure that we have plenty of staff so that patients aren't waiting. We get patients in and out quickly. We, and very importantly, we bill like a primary care office. So when patients walk in, whereas a visit in an emergency room is $850 for a simple visit like a strep throat or a hospital facility.
We can only deal with the
Yeah,
size
just-
of the
yeah,
sign here tonight.
So
That's
to get
planning,
That was my, you know.
That's
that
planning
was
board
my-
stuff.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
but
I
he-
get
yeah, but I-
carried away on that a little bit, but basically, we're very cost-effective alternative. And so what we have, everybody walks into our facility. So typically, patients very often, this has to do with the sign, are, you know, although we only transfer 1% of our patient, 1.5% of our patients to the emergency room, because patients are very cost conscious and people don't like going to the emergency room, we get everybody walking in. And also, we have people coming from a very large distance because patients are also today more and more cost conscious and aware of their deductibles. In our Windham facility, we get patients from Keene who will drive all the way for that lower deductible.
Okay,
So
all right.
the conclusion
Yeah, I
is
just wanted to know if
Sure.
you were affiliated with another hospital. That
yeah,
was it.
and I guess just the last point there is, I think it's
Now,
important. is
sir,
that-
please.
Certainly.
She asked you to stop.
No problem.
All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. Could I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve convenient MD urgent care petitioner and KJB Ventures LLC owner variance under section 17.104A of the zoning ordinance to allow us 172.7 square foot wall sign, whereas 134.5 square foot is permitted. The parcel is located at 4 Dobson Way and the C2 General Commercial and Aquifer Conservation District, where am I, sir? Tax map 3D, lot 003-03, case 2014-32, and there is nothing from staff. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. 500.
No, opposed.
You opposed? Okay. Oh, you're opposed also. Okay, 320.
Myself and Tony.
But it has passed, majority.
Thanks so much
Thank
for your
you.
time.
Gentlemen, you have 30 days. Somebody can come back and appeal this. So if you proceed within the 30 days, it's at your own risk.
Okay.
Good luck, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
The second petitioner is Sean Pacheco, Professional Martial Arts Academy, and G&G Scully LLC owner, seeking a special exception under Section 2.02.3C1 of the zoning ordinance to allow a commercial recreational use in the C2 General Commercial, PRD, Elderly and Aquifer Conservation Districts. The parcel is located at 370 DW Highway, tax map 4D-3, lot 001-0, case 2014-33. And Sean, before you testify, I'm going to swear you in. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Good evening. So I just read
The points of law, yep.
Make sure your mic's on. Your mic, green light's lit.
Is it a bright green light?
yeah. Brought glasses. The specific site is an appropriate location for such use or uses in the terms of overall community development, because since we are a busy martial arts school, being in this specific location is a great way to attract other families to the location. It's a benefit to the credit union, and hopefully the abandoned Shaw's Plaza will bring new businesses there. And it's very convenient to our families from Merrimack. Convenience factor. Do I go to B?
See if, any questions? Okay, go ahead.
The uses developed will not adversely affect the neighborhood because we operate in a safe and controlled environment. It's always supervised by multiple adult instructors, and we've been doing this for 10 years. If I go to C.
All right.
There will be no nuisance or serious hazards to vehicles or pedestrians. We have our own parking lot, a separate parking lot. It's actually a lot safer than our other location where the DW Diner was. We also operate opposite hours of the banking. So when the banking bank is closed, that's when we start to run our classes. And then noise control, we've tested there's no noise. Do I go to D or no?
Questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for proper operation of the proposed uses because we've owned this business for 9 years. I've been in the town of Merrimack. Some of you have been in our school before. We know what we're doing. It's completely safe. We have the best facility. There shouldn't be no issues there at all.
The only question I have, and I apologize, I probably should have asked this around C, is you make a comment here about indoor and outdoor. Are you referring to performing your practice outside of the building?
If we do that, we just go jogging around the back of the Shaw's Plaza. There's nothing there. We don't have a specific outdoor class or anything like that.
Oh, okay.
So,
Would that be just for physical fitness type
yeah.
thing?
Yeah, it's like, that's mostly myself and my wife that run the school. We'll go running around the building to warm up. That's about it.
Any other questions or comments?
I actually have a second one. State here that your hours are going to be between 5 and 9 p.m. at night. Do you have any intention of expanding beyond?
We're actually open in the morning, but we're actually open before the bank gets there. You get there at like 7 in the morning, and then we're closed all day long, and then we'd come in at 5.
Okay.
And then we'd closed at, I think, like 8:30, 9 o'clock, somewhere in there.
The only reason I ask is in multiple places you do mention sound and how it could impact the bank next door. I guess I'm just curious, at any point in time, would you expand so that your hours are overlapping theirs? Or
Absolutely, but to do a sound test, I have a $3,000 stereo system with a huge amp. We actually went in there first thing with the bank and opened up all the doors. They were standing right there. I said, this is not how we're going to play this, but we're going to see how loud we can get this. And you cannot hear a single thing. And believe me, classes, you couldn't possibly make enough noise. If we can't outdo it with the stereo system, it's obnoxious. And we put it on 3, but we checked with them. They were like completely happy. No issue.
okay, so this wasn't done like a decibel meter test or anything like that.
It's huge. Yeah, believe me, you could probably break glass with the thing. But that's how we tested it. We're like, let's just do something really obnoxious. They weren't open. They were standing right there. I'm like, they thought it was pretty funny. I'm like, can you hear it? They're like, nope. I'm like, really? Like, okay.
Okay, and because of that, have you done anything to sound insulate the facility?
It is completely soundproofed.
Okay.
Yeah, seriously, you cannot hear anything in that bank from one area to the other. Can't hear anything.
Okay.
Rich, are you familiar with that location?
Yes.
There was a Cleaners before that, so that was going all day long. It used to be Zoot's Cleaners back there.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Well, we're just dealing with use. We're only dealing with the use of that.
Well,
Is that a proper use?
Right, but I just wanted to make the point that there was noise going on all day long in there.
I was only asking because it was referenced multiple times in here. You're right, though. I'm sorry.
All right, any further questions, comments? Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. Anyone here to testify for this special exception? Anyone here to testify against it? Close the public hearing. Motion, please?
I motion to approve Sean Pacino, Professional Martial Arts Academy petitioner, and G.G. Scully LLC owner, special exemption under Section 2.02.3 CL of the zoning ordinance to allow a commercial recreational use in the C2 General Commercial PRD Elderly and Aquifer Conservation Districts. The parcel is located at 370 Daniel Webster Highway, tax map 4D-3, lot 001-01, case number 2014-33. Nothing from staff. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? 500. That's it. That was easy.
Thank you. Do I leave now?
Yeah, you're all set.
Or stop by and try out the classes if you like. Thank you. This is way better than any other night.
Yeah.
Oh, All right, the next item is Jesse Frazier, petitioner owner, Bluebird Enterprises, seeking a variance under Section 2.02.1A of the zoning ordinance to allow a personal service critter control business in the R Residential and Aquifer Conservation Districts located at 144 Wire Road, tax map 7C, lot 019, case 2014-34.
Evening, folks.
Good evening.
My name is Jesse Frazier, lifelong resident of Merrimack. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with critter control. I heard you guys talking about skunks with a jar on his head and all sorts of other stuff. We have been in Merrimack since about 97, 98. The office moved shortly up to Hooksett from about 05 to about 09. We purchased our property, 144 Wire Road, November of 08. The business was moved there in 09. We then purchased the adjacent property.
All right, excuse me, but could you just read the points of law? I think we're all set on the background.
Okay.
All right?
Which points of law do you want me to start on? One?
Right, number one, please.
All right. Granting the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. Public health and safety will not be a concern with this variance. It will be handled in accordance with the appropriate town regulations. I don't believe there is any with regards to what we're doing or livestock, which we don't have on the property, besides chickens and things like that on our personal property. The use will not alter the character or feel of the residential and somewhat rural character of Wire Road. Through planning board approval, hopefully, we will return the lot to its fully once wooded lot. It was cleared before we purchased it, unfortunately. Otherwise, it would have been mostly wooded. To a more rural feel with replanting area vegetation with oaks and maples across the front of the property, which it has somewhat now.
Questions? Go ahead.
All right. Spirit and ordinance is observed because the primary use of the storage trailer and nominal vehicle parking is to assist in the operations of Critter Control's service business. So we primarily work out of there. We go to people's houses. We don't have anybody showing up there. To assist with wildlife damage and repair for area residents and service their immediate needs with wildlife control operations. We're not just a trapper. We also fix everything on people's houses. So construction and roofing to repair the areas where the squirrels got in or the raccoons tore a hole through the roof, those sorts of things.
Questions? Go ahead.
All right. Granting the variance will do substantial justice because it would easily allow us to use the parcel for our critter control business, which is a nuisance wildlife repair, which we already explained. We control animals in and around people's homes and residences and commercial properties. We're a contractor, like I had stated earlier, so we don't really do a lot of actual business operations at the actual address. We also assist the towns with nuisance wildlife, as well as we also do rehab services as well out of that location for injured orphan wildlife. Those are free services that we offer to all town residents and area residents.
Go ahead.
All right. 4, for the following reasons, the values of surrounding properties will not be diminished. We plan to do a couple things here. 1, we plan to add trees to obscure the storage trailer from the roadway views, which things have started to grow in now since the lot was cleared. We are adjacent to our neighbor, 138, who currently, I believe, has no view of our storage trailer there or the adjacent parking area. I say parking, it's just a cleared lot with some stone dust down. The existing vegetation level is high. We don't plan on having any kind of signage. Most of our advertising is done online and yellow pages. We don't really attract a lot of people coming to our place. The storage trailer has been painted brown, more of a woodsy feel. It also matches the same brown on our house, and we've added a fence across the front of it to kind of blend in with everything there. The existing stockade fence pretty much obscures everything except for the upper 3 feet of the storage trailer now.
All right,
All right. Unnecessary hardship, you want me to go into that too?
please.
All right. Essentially, if we aren't granted the variance, we would have to sell the lot, and we'd have to find appropriate storage for a rental facility somewhere else. We moved from a storage place in Hooksett, and our mortgage and taxes is less than what we were paying for commercial storage with office space at that location in Hooksett, which we had from '06 to the beginning of '09.
So you mentioned office space. Are you intending to use part of your house as office space?
Yeah, that we will be working with the planning board later. We have a small office. It's a 8 by 10 room. My wife basically runs the office stuff. The phones are handled by me. She does just all the back paperwork. So there's no actual office where people come to because it's a service business. She basically sends out bills.
Yeah, okay.
And that's it. So
Now, did you say you had a staff also with that? Staff with it besides your wife?
not at this time, just her and myself. We had a part-time employee last year, but not at this time.
All
We
right.
only have 2 service vehicles currently at that location.
Cheryl. Thank you. How many vehicles are you going to have on your property at one
We don't
time?
plan on having more than 2 or 3 staff members, including myself, so maybe one other full-time employee.
You only have one vehicle for your business?
We have 2 vehicles. I've got my vehicle, and we've got a spare vehicle.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I have a question. Jillian, do we know yet if this is going to go for occupation? Is this going to go to planning board for occupation ruling? Do we know yet? You think it will go? Okay.
I don't plan on having anything else there
You covered
besides
my
the storage
questions, yeah.
trailer that is
Yeah, I
currently
saw
there.
the full condition, yeah.
Basically, I'm just here to ask forgiveness for the storage trailer that's been there since about 2010, beginning of 11.
Yeah.
We do catch up with you sooner or later.
Our information says if it's deemed necessary.
Right.
And I was wondering if it had gotten deemed
Okay.
yet.
Gotcha.
All right, the next one?
All right. The proposed use is reasonable because the lot lies within the R1, but it is a more rural, it was an empty lot originally. It is housing our storage trailer on the lot, and it's partially obscured by the trees. Compared to existing houses in the area, the storage trailer is set back further. I've got it set at about 70 feet back from the roadway, whereas I think 60 feet is required. And does not detract from the area's houses. There are similar service-based businesses in my area. Within a quarter mile, there's 5 service-based businesses. I don't know if they're all legal or not, but there are people with more trailers and more things coming and going. I've got a vending business 2 houses down from me that has a Pepsi and a Coke deliveries 3 times a week. There's landscapers, there's janitorial supply places, and at the 4 corners we also have the trash company. I forget what they are, and he's got 4 trucks there, I think.
Buckley?
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
All right, the next one, please?
All right, the property adjacent to our current residence lends itself very easily to being used for our service-based business. We originally purchased this property for less than what we were paying for a commercial rent storage in Hooksett, as I as I stated earlier. Our previous location in Hooksett. Property was partially cleared by Lamontagne Builders, who was the previous owner who purchased the property during the fire sale that the town had. We're utilizing the existing vegetation at the front of the property to obscure the storage trailer and stockade fence. We added the fence and painted the trailer for cosmetic appearance in this area. Without this variance, we would obviously be forced to sell the lot and find storage office space area at additional expense and travel time incurred by us.
Right. Any further questions or comments?
I think
Can
the
I
only,
just add something? Oh, sorry.
well, I was gonna say, the only comment that I have is, I understand that you're looking for a variance for where you're placing this trailer. The purpose of the ordinance is to regulate business being operated on residential property.
That's correct.
In this particular case, do you intend to be doing any type of business work on or in the trailer while it's on the
That
property?
is strictly storage for, dry storage for supplies and tools and all sorts of, everything else can't fit inside the trucks.
Okay, so you'll neither have customers on the property nor?
No customers, no.
Okay,
Just like a fix-it business that comes to your house, we're the same thing.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Our goal in the long run, after this property is paid off, is to combine the lots. But the loan on, I think we have 8 years left on this loan, so in 8 more years, we'll be showing up
But
later.
didn't you say that people did come in to the office to pay bills and?
This is the
Et cetera.
property next to his house.
Oh, okay.
My house, nobody comes to either our
Okay,
house or the
that's, okay, that, I
Yeah.
needed clarification on that, I wasn't sure. If there are no further questions,
Clarification on anything?
well, if we do pass this, there are gonna be staff recommendations that,
Perfectly fine.
okay. Jillian, do you have anything to add to this? Yeah, there'll be 4 staff recommendations if this passes. Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anybody here who would like to testify for the variance? Anyone who'd like to testify against the variance? Sir? You can use that, but I'd still like you to sign in on the sheet there, please.
You can actually, Jesse, you can actually take a seat back there.
You can sit there and your name, please.
Hi, my name's Paul Pelsinski, and I've been a resident at 132 Wire Road for 24 years now. I have 3 concerns about this variance. The first is that back on April 19th, there was a fire on at the property in question. According to the Merrimack Fire Department, it was a vehicle fire, and that's what got me first concerned about this business. In this particular case, it was only a vehicle fire. However, what if chemicals were involved? This is a critter control, pest control service. There are poisons and toxins obviously involved. These by themselves, I believe, poses a danger to the community. My second concern is, what if there's a chemical spill? For one, I don't even know if there hasn't already been a spill. Undoubtedly, there are large quantities of toxins and poisons involved in this business. This stretch of Wire Road is on a limited salt route, presumably due to its proximity to Babusick Brook, and everyone in the area uses well water. If our groundwater gets contaminated, then what? My third concern is that this exemption would establish a precedent for other potentially dangerous businesses in residential zones. And as an example of this is when the Jehovah Witnesses wanted to build a church in the residential district on Wire Road. One of the arguments they used was that an exception was given to the Bedford Road Baptist Church decades ago. So once the precedence is established, it's there forever. So my personal opinion is that this is a potentially dangerous business that has no business in a residential zone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Three-quarters of what he said is not valid. We are a wildlife control firm. We use no chemicals, no poisons. We are not a exterminator. We are a nuisance wildlife control company. So we handle mouse size and larger issues. We do not use poisons. We do not use toxins. We do not use any chemical sprays. We are a trapping and contractor firm. The fire that we had was my 2006 Chevy 2500 did catch fire. Bow your heads, please. She was very good. That is something that doesn't happen that often. I don't know anybody else who's ever had a car fire, but I was that person. So you see, there you go. It happens every now and then. So the precedent that was set by the Jehovah's Witnesses, I do agree with him that it does set a precedence. We are not looking to establish any kind of retail location with people coming to us. We are strictly a service-based business, in line with all the other service-based businesses. The janitor, the vending people, the landscapers that are around the corner from him, adjacent to Willow Pond Nursery, I think is where that is.
Yeah, corner of Bedford
Yeah,
and
there you
Jacko.
go. Yeah, so we don't have any kind of chemicals or toxins. We're on well water as well too, just like everybody else.
Phil, if you would just indulge me for a moment.
Yeah, I just comment that we do not use precedent. Each case stands on its own. I know you're correct about the argument, but I don't think it weighed heavily with anybody in the board, at least it's not supposed to. So we look at each individual one. Because we allow one, that wouldn't mean we would allow another one or more, depending on the situation. So you're in the ballpark, but pretty iffy. Thank you for your comment, Joe.
Knowing about wildlife, you trap. Do you relocate?
We are the only company in the state of New Hampshire that legally relocates animals. We have 180 legal sites in the state of New Hampshire where we're legally allowed to relocate animals to. We do not relocate anything on property.
All right, my other question.
And we do not euthanize all of our animals either.
My other question is, some of the animals that you trap, if it's late in the day, do you hold them
Depending
in
on
the cage overnight before you relocate them? Are they on that property?
Yes, they are on that property. Typically, our day ends around 4 o'clock. During this time of year, it's not a problem. If we're catching animals, we're releasing them the next day. They're typically in the vehicles or on our personal property. But most of the time, although we are a trapper, most of the time we utilize a one-way valve, which you seal up the house, you install a valve, the squirrels exit but not re-enter. So we actually don't do a lot of physical trapping.
No, I'm just asking, do you
yeah.
keep the animal overnight if it's late in
We
the day and then
typically-
relocate
yes.
them the next day?
We typically do. We feed it and we'll water them, and then we'll let them go at those area sites. But we try to be very aware. Animals are picked up first thing in the morning, and usually they're let go by noon. It all depends on where the animals are caught and the scope of our work
Okay, thank you.
in that day.
Thank you. Right. Okay, since there's no further questions, I'm going to close the public hearing. Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion to approve Jesse Frazier petitioner, owner Bluebird Enterprises, variance under section 2.02.1A of the zoning ordinance to allow a personal service critter control business in the R Residential and Aquafire Conservation Districts located at 144 Wire Road, tax map 7C, lot 019, case number 2014-34, with the following recommendations from staff. The petitioner to receive planning board site approval for the storage trailer, including review by the Merrimack Conservation Commission if deemed necessary, and satisfaction of any comments. 2, the petitioner to receive planning board site plan approval for a home occupation if found applicable by the planning or zoning board. 3, should the level of intensity of the critter control use exceed current representations made to the ZBA, to include number of clients, days, hours of operation, number of vehicles stored, etc., the petitioner shall return to the ZBA to request a new variance. And number 4, petitioner to further annotate the plan to include the purpose of the plan, owner's signature, date, number of employees, vehicle parking areas, etc. On a side note regarding this, and the reason I want to putting forward to approve this is that even I do recognize the concern about the chemicals. Obviously, that was addressed, but I would say that where you have a janitorial supply company and a landscaping company, you probably have equally harmful chemicals that could easily spill into the land, more so than a critter relocation, trapping and relocation that is using probably more humane trapping methods if they're relocating the critters out in the wild. So that's my motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All against? Aye. 5-1-0. 4-1-0, I'm sorry. I'm the only one against. Okay, you're all set?
Thank you. Can I ask what number 4 was?
Number 4 was,
And I'm sure I'll get all
So,
that later, but
and you probably may be able to clarify it too, annotate the plan to include the purpose of the plan, the owner's signature, date, number of employees, vehicle parking areas, etc. What, I guess he's probably wondering what the plan is.
It's the current site plan, and we'll go through it with you in the office.
one that
and-
I sort of drew up there.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Put it in man speak. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Here you go, take this copy if you would, number 4 is on there.
Thank you, folks.
So we have 30 days for someone to challenge this.
Yeah. Point to make to make to staff, I think. There, at the end, it said, and other comments satisfied. You know, I'd have a little trouble agreeing with that in the future, leaving it wide open like that. You know, state what specific things we would consider, and not leave an open statement like further comments. Because somebody could make a ridiculous comment that neither board cared about. And
Could be a loophole that nobody even thinks about. Okay. See you later.
I will be back.
Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is Wayne Doyle, petitioner, Payless Used Car Sales, and Frank Twardowski, owner. Variance under section 2.02.4B of the zoning ordinance to allow a used car sales business in the 1-1 Industrial and Aquifer Conservation Districts located at 759 DW Highway, tax map 7E, lot 042-01, case 2014-35.
No show.
here,
You did an excellent job reading that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew. I'm
Right,
sure
no show at
he'll,
the top of the paper.
how do you want to handle it, Jillian?
Or we just make a motion to not approve?
I was going to say that.
I don't want it. He could have had a car wreck or something.
We'll have staff reach out to him and find out what happened. Hopefully he's okay.
So you want community development to contact them?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, you wanna call it postponement, delay, postponement?
Oh, it's-
Want a motion?
Phil?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry, Phil? You're good at that.
case number 2014-35, the Doyle Car Sales request for variance postponed to the next regular meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0-0.
You need to be sworn in.
This is
Okay.
the
You need
last
to be
one.
sworn in. I think you got here after we swore everybody in.
Were you sworn in?
Okay.
All right. Good.
Well, stand up. Can you raise your hand? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Right. Oh, this is the last one.
Uh-huh.
Right, the last item is Ken Clinton, Meridian Land Services, Inc., petitioner, and Robert and Susan Lavoy, owners, requesting an equitable waiver of dimensional requirements under Section 2.02.7.7B of the zoning ordinance to permit existing improvements, retaining wall, paved driveway, and propane tank located within the 25-foot wetlands buffer to remain on a parcel of land located at 11 Brienne Drive in the R Residential and Aquifer Conservation Districts, tax map 6C, lot 144-05, in case number 2014-36. And before we start, did you bring any of the paperwork we talked to you about? Okay.
You guys need sworn in?
He was just sworn in.
Just now?
I was.
Yeah.
Oh, you was?
I was, yes.
I apologize. Hey, I'm human.
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Ken Clinton with Meridian Land Services, here representing the applicants, the landowners, Robert and Susan Lavoy, in this application for an equitable waiver. The equitable waivers for some encroachments into the 25-foot buffer at their property. Specifically, it's been noted a stone retaining wall, portion of a paved driveway, and portions of an underground propane tank. To clarify the documents, I had submitted a full application package. Did you expect more in copies from me tonight? Is that what you were speaking of?
Well, we had stopped at the house, and Mrs. Lavoy came out and said that she had documentation back to, what, 2012?
When we first went for the permits and everything, that everything was approved.
It was
Yeah.
approved,
Oh.
now all of a sudden,
That's all. That was all in my application package, and I'm prepared to touch on that as I proceed.
do we have that, Jillian?
Yes, that was this.
It's 2014.
Kelly. She can work that out.
Are you speaking about the septic approval, et cetera? Yeah, that's all part of the record. I do have additional copies of the operation of approval in construction for the septic design, but that's part of my presentation. So I can bring you along as we go.
All right, well, what I was looking for was the documentation where this had been approved prior, and now they have to come back in front of us because it's not approved anymore. No, and we don't have anything in our packet on it.
May I suggest, if I may?
Go ahead.
Yeah, just go ahead and talk about the spatial exception and why
Thank
that's
you.
justified, the dimensional, so.
Sure, it's actually an equitable waiver.
Instead of, equitable waiver, instead of going into planning board type issues. Just stick with the dimensional waiver argument.
Yes. If I can grab the mobile microphone. As you consider the application for an equitable waiver, It actually, in the town's application, has 3 specific questions to address. The first question starts off with dealing with a 10-year period. If you can prove that the item in question has existed for prior to 10 years, then it's understood to be passed or grandfathered, if you will, as acceptable. In this particular case, although certain aspects of this wetland buffer disturbance were generated 10 years or greater, we could not make the claim that all these improvements had been in place at that time. Just to give you a brief comment on the location, Brienne Drive is a subdivision in town. The particular lot that the Lavois purchased had been vacant during much of the construction of Brienne Drive. In fact, it was used for some material storage. And the nature of the wetland itself and why we are seeking some relief for the buffer is integral to the actual dimensional relief. So I wanted to draw your attention to the approved plan that created Lot 6C, Lot 144.5, which is the Lavoie zone. At that time, wetlands were flagged in 2003 by, as the plan states, Richard Bond. That was the predecessor to the subdivision plans that were created by another engineering firm. I physically went out on the ground prior to this application being filed to try to recover those flags. In our business, wetland flags are hung on the nearest branch or tree, if you will, of a wetland area as it's being delineated by a wetland scientist. Those flags are intentionally made to deteriorate and become brittle and then disintegrate, if you will, so that you're not having plastic flagging, if you will, last forever and be effectively trash. So it's intended over a period of time to deteriorate and become brittle and fall off and disintegrate. I did not witness any of these flags in this area. That would then be the physical evidence, the eye-catching item that this is where the wetland line is, and therefore be put on notice that the buffer starts at that point. As far as the wetland flagging at that point, subdivision plan is created, and this particular subdivision plan did show on this lot a 25-foot dashed line. The plan called it a no-cut buffer. It was actually labeled on the plan as a no-cut buffer. Well, it's a wetland buffer, and in the regulations, you can cut within the 25 feet. So that on its face is erroneous and really sets the stage for some of the perhaps misunderstandings or uncertainties about where that buffer line is. This is the subdivision plan that actually gets recorded. Along with that subdivision plan set, there's a plan and profile for road design that's created. This is the plan view. This shows the proposed road location, drainage, grading for the road, etc. But what I draw your attention to on this particular exhibit, and all of these exhibits I show were part of the application package, and these actually have the town stamps as received, recording information. These are the approved plans on file in the town records. Here's the lot in question, 6C-144.5, the Lavoie property. Here's the wetland that we're discussing here. There are no wetland buffers shown, no septic buffers or setbacks, no building setbacks. And what is very interesting is not only is there no wetland buffer shown, but there's grading, road grading, fill, disturbance, with a silt fence here up to 5 feet from the wetland. And this is in a time period when this ordinance was in effect. So this plan, this road was designed, constructed with a disturbance to this buffer. I can't state the date. It's circa 2004, 2005, so it's within the 10-year period. But this disturbance predated the more formal disturbance that occurred as a result of the retaining wall in that area. If we move forward, this is the septic design that was done prior to the Lavois purchasing the property. It was actually done for another entity, another company. Prior to this, the Lavois actually started taking some occupation of the land, and it's in this time frame, about 3 years ago, that deconstructed this stone retaining wall. That's one of the items that's in the buffer. The stone retaining wall was placed at the bottom of the slope where the road was constructed, so there's fill that was brought into that buffer for road construction, and there was a silt fence that was still remaining. The Lavois built the stone retaining wall at the face of the silt fence, which is land that was already disturbed as part of the road construction and the road fill. They used that silt fence as a reasonable guide. They relied upon that to say, well, if that's how the subdivision was constructed, the road was approved and constructed, well, that must be okay. They didn't have any reason to suspect otherwise, and they felt that if, obviously, the silt fence set the limit of the buffer, it would be reasonable to construct their retaining wall. Now, this wall existed prior to this septic design being done. I drew in this pink line here, the 25-foot buffer. This septic design didn't show a buffer. It showed a building setback, it showed a septic setback, but it didn't show a wetland buffer on this plan. So as this was done, certain improvements were proposed already to be into the buffer without this particular entity knowing about it, and certainly the Lavoies were not part of this. They had not even taken part into this process. So as we see here, I show the location, or I'm directing your attention to the location of this retaining wall that was already constructed with the then proposed driveway in this fashion, and what I've outlined here is the proposed driveway, which would also have been in the buffer. The driveway coming in, it's a side entry garage, the house is here and the leach field's here. So this was a design that was done by another consultant, didn't show the appropriate information on it. It was approved by the town, the state, a building permit was issued with reliance upon this configuration, and then the Lavoie started the construction based on all of these preceding approvals and permits that were in place, with an understanding that the silt fence that had been established around the wetland was the limit from the road fill that was reasonable to upgrade to. After they started construction, obviously the house was substantially done. They paved the driveway, they had a propane tank installed, all with the understanding that the plans that they were provided and relied upon and had permits were what they should rely upon. They were seeking a CO, and at that point, community development looked at this certified plot plan done by another company and said, oh, well, we have an issue. Your improvements, your stone wall, your driveway, and your propane tank are whole or partly into the 25-foot buffer. And that's what brought about this. It was an error that was created through unintended consequences of certain plans not depicting things properly, wholly, fully, or correctly, and then getting through the chain of review and certain approvals. In this particular sense, the plot plan that was provided actually says no disturbance buffer finally at the very end of the process. It's actually labeled correctly. We were alerted to this and asked to help out, try to identify exactly what was correct. There was some question whether this propane tank was shown properly or this driveway was shown properly, and quite frankly, it wasn't. I had my staff, after I inspected the property and the wetlands, go out and locate precisely how the driveway is actually shaped, the location of the propane tank, and the retaining wall. The retaining wall is in much the same position as it was in the septic design. However, the propane tank is, majority of it is out of the buffer. But once again, it's a hard thing. A wetland location on the ground, when somebody delineates it, is plus or minus a few feet, up to 5 feet sometimes. One wetland scientist might not hang it in the same spot. I go out there, and I'm not a wetland scientist, but that's what my company does as one of its services. And I couldn't definitively say if I was sitting at this point, whether that was the wetland location or someplace else, and there was no evidence of any flags. So certainly a layman who doesn't know this, who relies upon previous plans that are done by others and approved, wouldn't have the benefit of knowledge, and they would take it for fact, if you will, that it was reasonable to construct as they did.
All right, Ken, can you hold on just a second, please?
Yep.
Does anybody have any questions or comments so far?
I can help you out a little bit.
Okay.
I think I can help you out a little bit. I think maybe it's very possible what happened was when they delineated the wetland in 2003, they used a hodgepodge of criteria. It was so bad they rewrote the RSA, and now that when they recognize a wetland, it's because only if there is wetland type foliage there visible. And when I visited the site, there was no wetland foliage visible very close to that rock wall.
Yeah, there was
So the original one could have had it delineated as under the old rules, under the vegetation new rule, which came about in '06 or '07, they would said, no, that's not a wetland.
Yeah, so I too was
And that's
looking,
probably why it got jumped over.
I too was looking for the vegetative component, especially in the closest areas.
Yeah.
There's this one point, and it was really,
Not
that
there.
was where I was looking, and so I kept moving back and saying, well, okay, where's the vegetation component? Where's the flag? Can I find even a knot? Sometimes you can find the tiniest knot, not the streamers that hang down from the flag, but the knot. I couldn't even find that.
No, I don't think
So from a point of reference, it was, it was difficult for me, and this is my business, let alone the Lavois who don't have any sense of what this is. So from that standpoint, I went through and tried to, in my addendum dated August 12th, provides the answers to the 3 questions that are in the application. Incidentally, the staff memo that was put together and provided to you, on page 2, the back, they list A, B, C, and D, which is a slightly different format of the 3 questions that are actually in the application. But I've answered them in our form of 3 questions, and I'll touch on those now. So the nonconformity was actually discovered after the home was substantially done and the infrastructure improvements were completed during a review of the certified plot plan required as part of the certificate of occupancy. Upon review of Mr. Lavoie's plot plan, the Community Development Department informed him that's the stone retaining wall. And once again, we're talking about stone retaining wall. These are natural items from that standpoint. There's stones, there's gravel. So it's not like it's a foreign object necessarily. It's a natural substance. And buried propane tank were in the violation of the 25-foot wetlands buffer. The violation was not an outcome of ignorance of the law, failure to inquire, obfuscation, misrepresentation, or bad faith. Mr. Lavoie sought to comply with all aspects of the town requirements. He relied upon the approved plans, the previous construction activity, and issued permits during construction of his home and infrastructure. The violation was instead caused by a combination of factors. 1, good faith errors made by previous consultants. There's missing buffer lines and proposed improvement locations on development and design plans. 2, an error in the ordinance interpretation by previous consultants for incorrect text labeling on development plans, such as calling it a no-cut buffer, which is, once again, allowed under the ordinance. And 3, applicability made by municipal officers in the process of issuing a permit over which they had the authority, as the flawed development and design plans were approved by the planning board and various town departments, which were then relied upon for the building permit issuance and propane tank approval. That covers items number A and B on page 2 of the memo. Item C in the memo, or item 2 on my addendum. The physical or dimensional violation does not constitute a public or private nuisance. 1, the retaining wall was constructed at the toe of the road slope in front of the former silt fence and actually acts to prevent any disturbance to the adjacent wetland itself. In fact, it's a greater impediment. The toe of the road slope, something could come right down and go right into the wetland. This is actually a retaining wall that is actually a greater, it's a, if you will, a fence that therefore further delineates and demarks where the wetland is, especially when the wetland flags are longer in existence. The paved driveway is a standard amenity for a house and therefore is certainly not a nuisance. The underground propane tank is a common utility and therefore is not a nuisance. The improvements in question do not diminish the value of other property in the area, as they are standard necessities or amenities of homes within the subdivision. And the improvements in question do not interfere or adversely affect any present or permissible future uses of the property. They effectively enhance permissive uses while adding substantial protection to the adjacent wetland. Once again, that's item number C in the staff memo, or question number 2 in the application. Are there any questions on that? Moving on, question number 3, or item D in the memo. There is no public benefit to be gained by the removal of the improvements in question. In fact, removal would require substantial site work, which would eliminate the physical protection to the adjacent wetlands while substantially disturbing the stable buffer area. This has happened years ago, granted not the 10-year period, but the ground at the toe of the retaining wall is stable. It's unmolested forest floor that actually has retained its root systems, and there are weeds and plants and trees and shrubs growing in there. The same thing for the top of the retaining wall, except in the immediate area of the driveway, which the Lavoys are landscaping. You can see some of those in the photos. Improvements removal would require not only a significant cost to Mr. Lavoy, but it would also require major house reconstruction, as the side entry garage would not be reasonably accessed in its current configuration. This is a very important point to consider, as the driveway leaves Brienne Drive, and one needs to enter the side entry garage. If this pavement area here was required to be removed, there would be no way for Mr. Lavoy to get into his driveway. He couldn't take the right angle turn with enough space to get into the driveway and get out, and likewise be able to back out. His whole driveway would have to be reconfigured, and that would be a very awkward and unreasonable way or method to get in. Effectively, he'd have to relocate his driveway to the front of the house, and either stop use of his side entry garage or try to reconfigure the foundation and wall system, roof system to allow him to do that. And it's a fairly substantial effort. And finally, it would be inequitable to require the violation to be corrected, as the minor impact of the encroachment does not affect the interest of the public health, convenience, safety, and welfare, as noted in the regulations 2.02.72, which discusses the purpose of intent of the wetland and the wetland buffer. And the only one that has any applicability whatsoever is item A, and it talks about the purpose of that buffer was to prevent the development of structures and other land uses on or adjacent to wetlands that would contribute to the pollution of surface and groundwater. Well, the retaining wall certainly doesn't, and a buried propane tank doesn't, and the driveway, by virtue of being on the opposite side of the retaining wall, is, once again, the retaining wall acts as a fence or a demarcation and prevents anything else from traveling down the side slope of a driveway that would go into the wetland. So from that standpoint, it's clear that they would not be detrimental in that fashion. So as the improvements in question do not adversely affect the interests of the public health, convenience, safety, and welfare, and due to the particular circumstances of this application, we're requesting the granting of the equitable waiver. Are there any questions?
You were very, very thorough. Thank you for that.
Yeah. All right, since there's no questions, I'm going to open the public hearing. Anyone who'd like to testify for this item? Anyone who'd like to testify against it? Close the public hearing. Could I have a motion, please?
Make a motion to approve Ken Clinton Meridian Services, Inc. petitioner and Robert and Susan Lavoy owners equitable waiver of dimensional requirements under section 2.02.7B of the zoning ordinance to permit existing improvements, retaining wall, paved driveway, and propane. Actually, do we need to vote on these separately? I should have asked that. Or can we vote on them all together? All together, okay. Sorry. Retaining wall, paved driveway, and propane tank located within the 25-foot wetlands buffer to remain on parcel located at 11 Brienne Drive and in the R Residential and Aquifer Conservation District's tax map 6C lot 144-05, case number 2014-36, and I do not believe there were any staff recommendations. Nope. Do I have a second?
Second.
Nope.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? 500.
Thank you very much.
That's right. That's not good.
you again.
You're welcome.
So,
Go ahead, what you were saying.
Was Lenny recusing himself?
Yeah, I'm on two of them.
Because of Meridian, or he knows those people?
The people and Frank Dudowski on the other one on the used cars. Okay? All right, now we are going to go on to the annual election of officers. Do I hear any nominations for,
Madam
Chairman.
Chairman, I would like to nominate Fran LaRue for chairman of the ZBA.
Second?
I'll let you run this one.
If we need a second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Abstain?
Oh, against? None. So it's,
I abstain.
I know, so
Oh.
it's 4-0-1. Fran abstaining.
Isn't it 5-0-1 if, doesn't the whole board have to vote?
I'm not going to vote for myself.
I know, don't alternatives also vote in board-related events?
They can.
Oh, okay.
They can. He chose not to.
Do you want to vote, Lenny? No, Lenny's all set.
I'd like to hear a motion for a vice chair, please.
I make a motion that we appoint as vice chairman of the ZBA, Phil Straight.
Second?
Phil, I thought you were leaving the board. Your term was coming up. The last time we talked, you said you were...
Yeah, no,
leave it.
I withdrew that and extended when Fran got hurt and we lost Barry.
Huh? Okay.
I withdrew that, decided to stay on.
Still like a second, please. Okay, I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
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 Abstain, yeah.
4-0-1. Okay, and the bylaws, does anyone have any recommendations, changes on the bylaws?
Not me.
No, looks good to me.
Patrick?
Does staff have anything to say?
I don't have anything unless you guys do.
So if we're not going to change them, we don't need any vote. All right, I've been in contact with Bob Best, who is the chairman of the planning board, and we'd like to have a joint meeting with the planning board, ZBA and planning board, and we have it planned for December. We don't have an exact date, but it will be in December. And what I'd like from the members of the committee is to please send me any ideas or suggestions that you would have for that meeting. Questions, anything at all, whether it be planning board, ZBA, anything at all. And Bob and I will put it together as an agenda. And we will go through it. I'm not sure how long it will be or how many items on the agenda, but I think this has been a long time coming and something that we should do. Phil, do you have anything to say on it?
No, just those items that I sent you and Tim has in his possession. It's the only thing at this time. And as I recall, back when we did it about 3 years ago or so, I thought there was kind of agreement between both boards to do it every year. And, one thing led to another. So I think there was some agreement to have one joint meeting approximately once a year.
Well, hopefully we can get back on track doing that. We are going to be having training with the town council, SEL. And again, if you have any training topics that you'd like discussed when we do have this meeting, would you submit them to me and to Tim, or Jillian, and we'll put them together for an agenda item for that training. So we're going to have 2 meetings coming up over and above our ZBA meetings.
Just so there's not duplication to Fran, things I had requested was like a regular report on recent court decisions that may or may not affect, upcoming things. Recent court decision, some information on internet locations, how to best follow those results. It's training on questioning petitioners without getting into planning board issues. The right to know law, which was kind of hot back a couple years ago when I wrote this. The right to know law and communication among ZBA and staff. And then to get staff approval of ADUs, look into that, and updating some of our older zoning laws.
This, just out of curiosity, I'm not sure if this is for legal counsel. I know that, we've just passed the bylaws, but should we consider at some point creating a time frame by which petitioners have to present so that we're not in cases where petitioners are giving a 20-minute presentation on 5 questions that they have to answer?
Go ahead.
Yeah, we've been chasing that one around for 5, 6 years. Nashua, some zoning boards have staff present it so that the presentation is sequential. They know just what we want. They do the petition. They read the petitioner for the petitioner. Petitioner needs to be there to answer questions. But I think that's something we could consider. Last month, as you recall, one petitioner was so nervous he left. He couldn't stay, and if staff could have presented it for him, and it was kind of to me it was kind of a no-brainer type of a variance anyway, and staff could have easily presented that for him. So that's something we could kick around. We have been kicking it around, It hadn't been suggested before, I should say.
Well, it's come into the discussion.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I don't know if it ever got kicked. It's come into the discussion.
Have there ever been, or are there boards in New Hampshire where the board presents it? I'm just curious about that.
The only one I'm aware of is staff.
You mean the board itself presents the item?
Where the board presents the item, yeah.
We're supposed to be judge and jury. That'd
Right,
be awkward.
That would be,
That'd be too awkward.
So that would be a crossing the line, okay. I do like the idea of, a third party, whether it be someone from the town reading this, because, again, time and time again, we seem to find ourselves in these lengthy hearings that are very simple, but they're lengthy.
right,
Yeah.
but some of them have to be lengthy. Some of them do. We have no choice, but a lot of them, that's why I said, read the 5 points of law, and we'll
Yeah.
take it from there.
But they still don't do it.
Yeah.
Is that something
Well-
that's agreeable with the board for
No,
Jillian to look into?
no, I don't, no, because I think that as a resident of the town of Merrimack, people have the right to get up and say what they need to say, and if it's gonna take 5 minutes, if it's gonna take 20 minutes, that's their right. They have been given notice of a variance or whatever that's gonna affect their property, their neighborhood, and they have every right to stand up and say that. Now, if somebody is nervous, and for the audience out there watching, if you're nervous and you don't want to present, and they should have the option to maybe have either community development make the presentation on their behalf, or put a proxy in place that can do that for them. However, telling residents of Merrimack that they don't have the, that we're gonna take away their right to be able to express their views on their town and things that are gonna affect their neighborhood, wholeheartedly would disagree with that, and I vote against that in a heartbeat.
But it has zero to do with the people.
It
What
does have
what
to
it
do
would
with
correct is some professional presenter using little buzzwords and trickery, for lack of a better word. People who are professional presenters, it would take that out of the picture.
Well,
And that would get rid of all the lawyers that come in here and make any presentations for
That would be the
clients.
proxy.
Yeah, but,
That would be the proxy.
so then that would take every single lawyer out of here that comes in to do a presentation for their clients.
No, if, it wouldn't in my case, because what I would recommend is staff ask them, are they comfortable presenting, or do you want me to present it for you?
That's why I said they have the option to have staff present on their behalf. Yes, that's why I said there would be an option for them to present on their behalf. But to tell everybody that staff was presenting on their behalf, I don't agree with.
I guess my question was more geared because of a time limit that we put on a particular case in the last meeting, where we limited the amount of time that abutters had to discuss.
That was not abutters. They were not all abutters. They were, the petitioner spoke, but if you remember, and that was quite the room was full.
Yes.
And everyone who wanted to speak, if you remember, I gave them 3 minutes. And then once everyone spoke, they could come up for another 3 minutes. But the petitioners had the right to speak for their petition.
Absolutely.
And it was quite complicated with all these people in the room.
Oh, no, I agree. I actually was suggesting that we follow that process and mandate it. Because I think that there have been cases where we've had people come up who were abutters, who 3 minutes would have been fantastic, and that's not what happened.
Yeah.
Well, again, it's, each case individually. Because we had someone get up who spoke, and I was not in the butter. I only gave him 3 minutes, but he did say everything he had to say, and, well, he would have said more, but I gave him the 3 minutes. But you had other people who wanted to go around and collect 3 minutes from each person if they weren't going to
Yeah.
speak, so they could add up their time and stand in front of the mic much longer.
I think you have to let people, if the public comes in, you have to let them talk. I'm talking about the petitioner. The way I would see it working was staff would make them that offer, and maybe Jillian would sit there throughout the meeting. She would present it, but before you close the public meeting, then you would ask, is there anybody want to speak in for or against this? And that would be the opportunity for anybody to come.
I know several months ago,
come
we had
forward.
one petitioner who had an attorney speaking from a forum, if you remember, Phil.
Yeah,
And no matter how many times I told him,
sure.
he just wasn't listening.
Yeah, and that's the reason for, that maybe we should take a look at whether or not we want staff to do the presentation. Now, Nashua, Nashua does it because they've got so many, they're really time constrained. They have to boom, boom, boom. They don't waste any time. It'd be well worth you ever to sit in on a meeting just to watch them. They shoot right through it, but I don't know. Doesn't matter to me, whatever the board wants to do, but we could certainly improve on the way it's done now, and it's our call.
Sounds like it's a good topic to add to our list.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we add it and keep discussing it with legal counsel?
Yeah, we'd want to give you time to talk to Tim and,
Yeah.
but maybe the town lawyer, whoever, sure. And if you would want to do that, if you'd be willing to do that, would be part of the consideration too, as far as I'm concerned. So, you could let us know.
I think it's something that I want to talk over with Tim and legal counsel before making any
Sure.
decisions.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Yeah, and no matter what anybody thinks, we can always do better. So it's same with every board can always find something to do some way to do things a little bit better, so, that part of it's not debatable in my mind.
And just to address what Patrick was saying earlier, I'm in complete agreement with you about giving the town the right to speak. It's not the first petitioner that I'm concerned with. It's really the last. If we have 10 petitions and we have some that are taking up a lot of time, it's being equal and fair that concerns me. That's all.
Well, we do ask them right in the beginning, do not repeat. If someone else has said the same thing, please don't repeat what another person has said. So we just keep our ears open also.
We do, and that still happens.
Yeah, still happen. Staff?
How can staff represent an individual?
They're representing the points of law.
Staff walks the applicants through the process, assist them in preparing to some extent their presentation. They come in and they give us their recommendations. I would be appalled if staff is quote-unquote representing the applicant. That's an attorney's job, that's the applicant's problem. Everything says it is up to the applicant to prove their case. Not up to staff to prove their case, it's up to them to prove the case.
But they're not representing the applicant. They're making a presentation. They're reading the points of law that the petitioner wrote down and swore to be accurate. He's reading the points of law that the petitioner wrote on a piece of paper.
So I have a question for staff, and I asked the staff person. The staff person is going to be able to answer that question?
No, the petitioner would be sitting in front of us.
So then what's the difference between the petitioner reading the 5 points of law and staff reading the 5 points of law? If I'm going to
Petitioners
ask
do
the
not always
questions,
read the 5 points of law.
then, and I think Fran did a very good job just pointing out, please start with the 5 points of law. Now, if anything, I would, if you want to put anything in there, either put into the preamble or put into the presentation of the variance or whatever you're hearing right off the bat. Would you please start with the 5 points of law? Now, if they want to start giving us the history of apartment complexes in Merrimack, that's where you go, no,
Yeah,
I said,
we've had
give me that.
before.
So if you want to do that, that I could see. But I agree with Lenny. It's the petitioner's point to make the presentation. And you're going to ask them questions anyway, they can sit there. I mean, there's a lot of people don't like the public speak. That's fine. Fortunately, sometimes you have to.
They'd have to be sworn in like they are now. Is really, other than Jillian reading each item and then stopping and asking the petitioner a question.
Still need to answer the question.
No, she read the petition, go to the 5 points of law, and then the petitioner would answer questions if there was any. If we didn't have any question about it, we go ahead and vote. Because we're only supposed to consider the points of law anyway, we're only supposed to consider the points of law anyway, not all that superfluous information.
But, a lot of the petitioners are good. They go right into the 5 points.
Sure.
Which we don't have a problem with that. It's just the few that we have to remind them. Or sometimes they don't know what we're referring to as the 5 points. All they know is they answered some questions. They didn't read that it's 5 points.
Okay, then the issue that I have, well, I have a couple issues right now, but the issue that I have with this is that this needs to be consistent. So, with all due respect to Attorney Michael, he comes in here instead of an easel presentation for 15 minutes, sit down, read the 5 points. I don't need to know the history of apartments or the history of the outlets or anything else in Merrimack. If we're going to do that, then I would like to see consistency. Because unfortunately, what the board lacks is consistency in enforcing people. We make some people do it, and then some people, we give them carte blanche to make a presentation. I mean, so if we're going to do something, let's do something consistent.
Well, that's what we're looking for, is
Yeah.
consistency.
So then,
For instance, on the signs, the signs down there in the plaza, we've been pretty strict with the signage within Charles Plaza, which is, you know, probably why we should have maybe been consistent here on this sign too. You're always gonna have those inconsistencies, because we are not to follow the rules, we are when to break the law.
All right.
But yeah, looking for consistency.
But don't forget that each case is an individual case.
Certainly not a big deal with me either way. I just a thought, I think just the pushback that we don't want to do anything different than was done in the past is the wrong mindset. We should look at ways to get better, do things. For instance, on the motion last month, you know, I've been here 9 years and I didn't really explain the criteria on my motion. And it just those things happen. You're never going to get away from those. But I was just looking for some consistency. Doesn't matter to me that much.
Well, you know, Phil, I know you feel strongly about it. Why don't you just jot down some notes, and next meeting we can go over them and see, you know, throw our heads together and see what we can come up with.
Well, they're big boys. They can think about it. If we want to take a vote next month, we can. But I don't, you know, I don't know that it requires a motion or a consensus. Just, you know, we need to have a consensus if the majority wants it, but everybody would have a chance to think about it for a month, and then we can talk about some more. It's not something that's going to happen overnight anyway.
No, that's right, yeah.
Probably take a year or so to.
What if we, you know, we're talking about the 5 points of law for a variance. What if we ask the question and then they answer the question? That way we can at least keep control of the flow of the conversation. Instead of saying, read from the 5 points, and like you mentioned, Fran, there have been a couple of people who have blatantly ignored that.
Oh, yeah.
And we could sit here and, you know, debate this with them, or we could frame it for them so that they have to fall into that line.
We could try doing it, but the thing is if they sit down and they go right into the 5 points, there's no reason to do it. You
Right.
know, if they come in, you tell them, okay, we'd like you to go right into the 5 points. We just want to hear why, when, how, whatever. And they do that, and then we can ask our questions. There's no reason to read it for them. You know, these are people are educated. We don't have to read for them. That's the way I look at it.
I agree. All right, so in that case, you know, and then we discuss what Patrick was referring to, just flat out put it in the preamble. Is that something that we can agree to?
I think it's something. I agree with Phil. So let's just table and come up with what we're really trying to accomplish here. I think there's a lot of different ideas. If there's some good ideas, I think we just need to let's give it some thought and talk about it a little bit more. Like Phil said, it's not even if we said yes to the preamble tonight thing, or doing that, and hashed it out right now, that's still going to take a couple months or longer to actually get all instituted. So instead of kind of coming off the cuff and trying to make a decision right off the cuff, and this is what we're going to do, which, by the way, anything that we do and we vote on is going to that becomes the law for CBA. Why don't we just give it some thought and discuss it? I mean, Phil's right. Nobody needs to jot anything down. Just give it some thought. I mean, we're thinking about, you know, trying to keep it consistent of when people come up, they present the 5 laws or the 5 points, and that they pause after each point and we can discuss that. Now, whether we try to put something in the preamble, whether it's something that the chair says prior to the meeting or to the person sitting down, you know, we can figure that out. But you know, let's instead of trying to hash something out and put something tonight, and then go, oh my gosh, why did we do that? Why don't we just give it some thought about what we're looking to do here? Because it sounds like there's 2 different things. One, we want them to go into 5 points, and 2, we want to put some sort of a time limit on on people's presentations. So I think that's two different things that people need to think about before making decisions that are going to affect the board going forward.
Right. Everyone, or at least the majority, has to agree on it. And and it's gonna be something that's gonna have to be worked on and finalized, and it's gonna have to work smoothly. It's not gonna have to be, over here, over there, up, down, or whatever. It's gonna have to run smoothly.
I don't think you can put a time on any petition, because as you said before, different petitions have different, I would say, different qualities. Now, you take a petition, I want a variance for la, 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 that's okay. But then you get like a corporation that wants a variance for this, a variance for that, they want a subdivision for this, and it's gonna take a lot more, it's gonna take a little longer than a regular, an easy, as Phil would say, no, it's not really a brainstorm. So on doing a time on something like that is gonna be difficult, I think.
I agree with you on that, Tony, but I think that we have also seen a couple cases this year in which we've had, and no offense to our legal society, but we've had lawyers. We've had lawyers, and they have been a little long-winded to get a point across, which not only are they educated, but we're educated, and we know what they're talking about, and we don't need the long-winded history, and I wouldn't give names, Phil, but I understand what you're saying, but I think we don't need also a lot of the backstories that we get, because a lot of times, and I'd say at least 80% of the time, it's not overly relevant to what we're looking at when we're looking at use, and that's why people are coming to us is about use. And a lot of times people start talking about stuff that really is more planning board and really not us. So, but I do agree. Each petition is different. You can't necessarily put a time limit on it.
Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I didn't want to get into that part about the professional end of it, but that's really what it would address. Those guys they're being paid to do a presentation. They're bound and determined to give their client a thorough presentation. You're going to be very hard pressed to shorten them up because they're trying to please their client. They can't get up and just go through the points of law and expect there too. So it's not, and no one, I don't think, inferred that it'd be tonight. We'd have to come to some kind of consensus. Staff would have to have some consensus. Then they'd probably have to run it by town council, meaning legal counsel, to get the wording of it, even if we did do it, to get the wording of it carefully done. So it's just something to be thinking about.
I think it went quite smooth tonight. I mean, when Fran asked the 5 points of law, these guys will go into it. It all boils down to the chairman has to get complete control.
And it depends.
And Fran's been doing that pretty good.
Thank you. It depends on the personality of the petitioner also.
Yeah,
Another thing too, now we're bringing it up, I'm not the chairman, and you can tell me to jump in a lake. Mostly everybody does. Anyways, I think that every time this is quite a while ago, the agenda is formulated, I would think that the staff should contact the chairman so she knows what's on the agenda. Not through the mail, but to sit down with the chairman and say, these guys are coming up, and there may be a possible problem with this, and this is what we think, that the staff thinks what should be done, and go from there.
Okay, I'm sorry, that brings up another point.
Go ahead.
Is the board comfortable in the timeliness of your packet? Getting your packet on Friday or Saturday? Is there any need, do you feel that needs to have it in our hands longer? For instance, it posts, 12 days? Yeah, it posts 12 days before the meeting, right?
Or is it 10 days?
So it's all ready, so everything's all put together and it's all ready to go 12 days ahead of time, right? It posts, the agenda posts, not the memos, okay. I'm okay with the timing of it. I wouldn't want it to be any shorter, than what we're doing now, but if there's anybody that thinks, you need earlier, a day or two earlier, why, speak up, because they can always shorten up the agenda. By the way, Jillian, we have said more than once that if you get a real busy slug of petitions come in, we're willing to meet more than once. We've said that several times, so, and I assume this board still goes along with that. That if you get piled up, rather than have a big, long agenda that's problematic for you guys, go ahead and shorten up and have a second meeting.
Yeah, because we have people who, on the committee, who have to work the next day also, so it's easy for them too. Do you work?
They say,
Yeah, well,
I was just thinking though, after 10 o'clock, you lose the crowd. When I say lose the crowd, you lose the petition. I mean, if he's the last on
Sometimes your bladder.
if he's last on the list, point of fact, that night we had the room packed, and if there was another guy after that, he would be, 10:30, 11:15, he's gonna say,
we
"What, are you
we
kidding
did
me?"
have petitioners after that. They were the first one on the
Yeah, I
agenda.
know. I'm just saying,
Mm.
if it went on and on and on.
Yeah, but
it-
I mean, not to interrupt Tony, but the chair could, you could, if you, something like that, and I know another chair that did this, I won't give names, but, you can move petitions. You just vote to move the petition up. So you could, in a petition like that where it was first, you could, I mean, if you think it's gonna be an issue like that, you can vote to just move it back and move everybody else up. Because that's the chair's,
No, I've
prerogative.
done that before.
Yeah, but then the petition that you moved up, all the other petitioners, and then the last petitioner, you feel you're gonna have a problem with, is in the same situation if a person is the last person to get on.
Right.
He's gonna stay here until 10:30, 11:15 at night, and then he's gonna make a big petition. In other words, a big statement, like, we won't mention any names, brings in the diagram of the property and so on and so forth. I'm just saying that I agree with Phil. We could meet 2 times.
Yeah, I agree.
We
That's
don't
fine.
have to have 15 or 20 petitioners.
That I have no I would have no problem with.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Lenny?
Number one, don't paint yourself into a corner. Number two, you have the packet, all board members have the packet for several days, 5 days, whatever. You have the applicant's written statements to the 5 points of law. You read them, you apply the law against his statements. He has to read them for the record. Fine and dandy. You already made your notes if you had any questions on his presentation. Now you get down to the open public hearing, the fors and against, and this is where you start to have to do some on-site work. But prior to that, it's pretty cut and dry as far as I'm concerned. If you've read the package and you've gone out to the properties, it's pretty simple work.
In theory.
No? Great.
Now, define in theory.
Well, I think that we as a board do a very good job of explaining what we expect from the petitioners, but it's not necessarily reciprocated. And that was actually the entire purpose for my comment earlier this evening.
But as Lenny says, you go out, you look at the properties, and once in a while, you run into somebody who's home and you can actually speak to them like we did Monday. But it's very, very rare that you're going to actually see somebody at home because most people work. So you're drawing basically your own conclusions until they get here and they give their reasoning in their own words.
We can battle this around until 12 o'clock tonight.
Yeah.
As long as somebody's
Okay,
buying breakfast.
are we all well set on this so far?
One more thing. One more thing. One last one, and this has came up a couple of times too, about having a regular meeting with staff, say on, pick a time, say Tuesday morning at 2 o'clock, staff would be available if you had any questions over anything on the agenda.
Tuesday morning at 2 a.m.?
At 2 o'clock in the morning?
That's what you said, 2 a.m.
2 a.m. 2 in the morning, 2 PM. 10 is what I meant to say. Duh, come on, duh.
Jillian, can you be in for 2
If I
a.m.?
said,
I don't know about 2 a.m., but 8:30 to 4:30, Monday through
I
Friday.
thought I
I'm
said 10 AM, but
I heard 2.
I might have said 2.
We're always there if you have questions and want input on anything. So
You would rather just
Don't
walk in
limit yourself.
unannounced than have a set time?
feel free to walk.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's even better. That's
Okay,
even better.
so this part of the discussion is now closed?
Motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
I have one question here. On page 14, line 40, says an unidentified member of the public stated. Now, I remember exactly who that person is, and I did address him as such. You want the name? It's Michael Thompson.
Oh, when you stand against the wall.
Line 40. Okay, all in favor of the minutes with the correction?
Aye.
Aye.
Who made the motion and who made the second?
My motion.
Rich,
Rich?
Who made the second? Was it Tony?
I did.
Tony?
So it's 5-0-0.
No, I
No?
abstain.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry, you did abstain. You abstained too? Oh, you,
Did everybody get a copy of the draft 2015 ZBA meeting schedule?
Yes.
Okay. Were there any
Motion to
comments
approve
on
meeting,
that?
meeting schedule.
oh, we don't have to.
Anything.
We already adjourned.
Yeah.
Fine.
Request permission to cancel 2015.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Nobody said anything.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.